I used to believe that if you worked hard, kept your word, and protected your family, life would eventually return the favor. That belief lived quietly in me for decades, right up until the day it died at my lake house. I'm not a violent man, never have been. I built my life on contracts, handshakes, and patience. 40 years in real estate taught me one thing: power doesn't shout, it waits. People assume wealth makes you cruel. The truth is, wealth just gives you a front row seat to human nature. You see who people really are when they think you're too old, too tired, or too sentimental to notice. The lake house was my sanctuary. Bought it after my wife passed, when silence became heavier than grief. I let my son and his wife use it whenever they wanted. No rent, no rules, just one request: respect the place and the name attached to it. Family should be safe. That's the lie we tell ourselves. My son Daniel was never greedy, but he was careless. He trusted too easily. His wife Laura was different. Sharp smile, perfect manners. The kind of woman who listens just long enough to learn what matters to you, and then files it away. I noticed it early, but I said nothing. When you've buried one spouse and raised a child alone, you learn not to fight every instinct. Sometimes love means stepping back. Still, something always felt off. I had the lake house deed transferred into a family trust 2 years ago. Daniel was the beneficiary. Laura knew that. She also knew I controlled the trust. People change when they understand leverage. That weekend, I drove up unannounced. No calls, no warning. I wanted quiet. I wanted to remember who I was before money complicated everything. The road was empty, the sky heavy with storm clouds. It felt symbolic, though I didn't know why yet. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a car I didn't recognize. Black, expensive. Not Daniel's. I sat there for a full minute, engine running, listening to my own breathing. Age sharpens instincts, it doesn't dull them. Something inside me went cold, not angry. Focused, I told myself not to assume. I told myself family deserves the benefit of the doubt. I was wrong. Before I even opened the door, I realized something important. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about access, about entitlement, about people mistaking kindness for weakness. And standing there, hand on the door handle, I understood a truth that would guide everything that followed. The worst damage isn't done by strangers. It's done by the ones who think you'll never fight back. I didn't announce myself. I didn't clear my throat or call out names like a clueless old man in a bad sitcom. I moved slowly, deliberately, the way you do when your instincts are screaming but your pride is begging you to be wrong. The house smelled different. Not musty lake air or old wood. Something sharper. Expensive cologne. Male. Not my son's. That's when my stomach tightened. I heard laughter first. Not casual laughter. Intimate. Familiar. The kind that belongs behind closed doors. Each step down the hallway felt heavier than the last. I remember thinking how strange it was that my hands weren't shaking. I wasn't angry yet. I was alert, like my mind had switched into a colder gear, one that didn't allow room for denial. The bedroom door was half open. I didn't push it. I didn't need to. Laura was there, my son's wife, standing near the window in one of my wife's old silk robes. The one I never threw away. The one she had no right to touch. And on the bed sat a man I'd never seen before, buttoning his shirt like this was just another Saturday. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Laura saw me. Her face didn't go pale. That's what shocked me. No fear, no shame. Just surprise, like I'd walked in early on a meeting she thought she had scheduled perfectly. "Richard," she said, too calmly. "This isn't what it looks like." The lie came so easily it was almost impressive. The man stood up fast, younger than Daniel. Confident, the kind of confidence money gives when it's not yours. He looked at me like I was an inconvenience, not a threat. I glanced around the room. My house, my memories. "Who is he?" I asked. Laura hesitated. "Just long enough." "A friend," she said. That was when I knew the truth wasn't just infidelity. It was disrespect. I turned to the man. "You know whose house this is?" He smirked. Actually smirked. "Yeah, we're good. We're good. Not I'm sorry. Not I didn't know. Just confidence borrowed from someone who believed she was untouchable." I walked out without another word. Not because I was weak, but because I had seen enough. Rage clouds judgment. Silence sharpens it. Outside, the lake was calm, indifferent. I stood there breathing in air that suddenly felt stolen from me. I thought of Daniel, my son, working late, trusting the wrong woman, unaware his life was being dismantled in a house meant to protect him. That's when the betrayal fully settled in. This wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. and I was standing at the center of it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't call my son. I called someone else. Meanie, ending, cliffhanger. As the call connected, I realized this betrayal was bigger than an affair. It was a calculated play. I didn't drive away right after the call. I sat in my car, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the water like it might explain how everything had gone so wrong. The lake had seen my happiest years and my worst nights. Now it had witnessed something else entirely. The moment I realized I had failed my son in a way no apology could ever fix. Anger came later. First came guilt. I replayed every dinner, every holiday, every time Laura smiled across my table and thanked me for everything I'd done for the family. I remembered how Daniel defended her when I questioned her spending habits. She's just ambitious, Dad. Ambitious. That was the word we use when we don't want to say entitled. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Running late. Laura already up there. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. What do you tell your son when the truth will break him, and the lie will destroy him later? That was the war inside me. Not whether to act, but how. I knew one thing with terrifying clarity: if I rushed this, I'd lose. Laura wasn't careless. She was confident. And confidence comes from believing the ground beneath you is solid. It wasn't. I thought about the trust. The deed. The accounts Laura had recently asked questions about, questions that suddenly made sense. This wasn't just betrayal of marriage. It was reconnaissance. She was mapping the exits before burning the bridge. The man in my house wasn't the problem. He was a symptom. I realized then that revenge didn't need to be loud. It needed to be precise. The kind that lets people destroy themselves while thinking they're winning. I typed a reply to Daniel, then deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Finally, I sent one sentence. Yeah, she's here. We'll talk when you get back. Not a lie. Just incomplete truth, the most dangerous kind. I stepped back into the house long enough to grab my jacket. Laura was in the kitchen now, pretending nothing had happened, scrolling on her phone like a teenager caught sneaking out. She looked up, eyes calculating. We'll discuss this later, she said, as if she had authority. I looked at her, really looked at her. The confidence, the assumption, the belief that I'd stay silent for the sake of family peace. You're right, I said calmly. We will. Her shoulders relaxed. That told me everything. Outside again, I felt something settle in my chest. Not rage, not sadness. Clarity. The kind that arrives when emotion steps aside and leaves room for resolve. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to warn her. And I wasn't going to protect her anymore. Some lessons can only be taught when the safety net is removed. As I drove away, my phone rang again. The person I'd called earlier was ready. And once that process started, there would be no clean way back. Mini ending cliffhanger, I knew that by morning. The balance of power would shift, and Laura wouldn't see it coming. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was restless, but because I was working. People misunderstand revenge. They think it's driven by rage, by impulse, by some explosive need to hurt back. That kind of revenge burns fast and leaves nothing but ash. What I was building required patience, structure, documentation. The same skills that built my fortune in the first place. By dawn, I had a yellow legal pad filled front and back. Step 1, information. Step 2, control. Step 3, timing. The call I'd made earlier wasn't to a lawyer, at least not at first. It was to my longtime financial trustee, Martin. He'd managed my assets for over 20 years. Quiet man. Surgical mind. Loyal because loyalty had always been rewarded. Freeze all discretionary access tied to the family trust, I told him. No alerts. No notifications. There was a pause on the line. Thens. Understood. That was power, not loud, not cruel. Just absolute. Next came the house. The lake property was technically held by the trust, which meant occupancy privileges were conditional. I reviewed the clauses myself. Laura had read the summaries. I'd written the fine print. Then I pulled phone records, security logs, guest entry codes, the black car, registered to a shell company that traced back to a man with a familiar name, one I'd seen before in a different context.
Consultant.
That word again. Patterns began to form. By mid-morning, Daniel called. His voice was tired, normal, unaware. Dad, Laura said you stopped by. Everything okay? I chose my words carefully. We'll talk tonight, in person. Silence. Then, is something wrong? Yes, I said, but not the way you think. I hung up before he could ask more. Every second of confusion was buying me leverage. I hated that part. But I hated lies more. In the afternoon, I met with my attorney. No emotion, just facts, evidence, options. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. By evening, everything was set in motion, but nothing had been revealed. That's the most dangerous phase. When the trap is built, but the target still believes they're safe. Laura texted me once. We should clear the air. I didn't respond. Because when someone asks for a conversation, instead of forgiveness, it's not closure they want, it's control. I poured myself a drink I didn't finish and stared at the city lights, thinking about how many times I'd protected my son by stepping in quietly. Fixing things. Smoothing edges. This time, protection meant letting the truth land with full weight. Tomorrow, Laura would make a move. People like her always do when they sense uncertainty. And tomorrow, I'd be ready. Laura woke up that morning believing nothing had changed. She went to brunch. Posted a filtered photo by the water. Caption about gratitude. People like her curate reality the way others decorate a room, carefully, deceptively. Behind the scenes, the ground was already shifting. At 9012, Martin confirmed the freeze. Credit lines tied to the trust paused. Discretionary transfers blocked. Access not revoked, just restricted enough to feel like a glitch. No explanations. At Tunlai 30, the property management company changed the lake house access codes, quietly, professionally, logged. At noon, my attorney sent a routine compliance notice to the trust's beneficiaries. Standard language. Nothing alarming unless you knew what it meant. Laura would read it. She always did. She liked to stay informed. By mid-afternoon, my phone rang. She didn't greet me. Didn't pretend. Something's wrong, she said. My card was declined. I let a second pass before answering. That happens sometimes. No, it doesn't, she snapped. I tried twice. I imagined her standing in a restaurant, smile tight, pretending nothing was happening while panic tapped at the back of her mind. You should talk to Daniel, I said calmly. He's not answering. Of course he wasn't. I'd asked him to take the afternoon off, no phone, just time to think. Another pause, then softer, calculated. Richard, if this is about what you saw, I cut her off. What I saw doesn't require discussion. Silence again. This time heavier. I think you're overreacting, she said finally. We're family? There it was, the word people use when they want immunity. You're right, I replied. Family is exactly why I'm being careful. I hung up before she could respond. That evening, Daniel came to my apartment. He looked exhausted, confused, worried in a way only a betrayed person can be before the truth lands. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. I told him enough. She's been lying to you, I said, about money, about the house, about someone else. He shook his head. You don't know that. I do, I said quietly, and soon you will too. I handed him copies of documents, not accusations, facts, dates, names, patterns. I watched his confidence fracture in real time. Downstairs, Laura tried to access the lake house. The code didn't work. She called again. I didn't answer. That was the moment she realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a shift. She still didn't know how far it would go. But she understood one thing now. I was no longer reacting. I was acting. The confrontation didn't happen the way Laura expected. There was no screaming match. No dramatic reveal in a crowded room. That would have given her something to perform against. Instead, it happened in my office. Quiet. Controlled. 3 chairs. 1 table, no witnesses. Daniel sat beside me, rigid, eyes hollow. He hadn't slept. Neither had I across from us. Laura looked composed, too composed. She wore black like this was a negotiation or a funeral, maybe both. I don't understand why I'm being treated like a criminal, she began. I've done nothing illegal. I folded my hands. Illegal isn't the standard here. She glanced at Daniel, searching for support. He didn't look back. I slid a folder across the table. This is a timeline. Property access, account inquiries, meetings you said were work dinners, and the man you brought into my lake house. Her jaw tightened. You invaded my privacy. No, I said calmly. You abused my trust. That's when the mask cracked, just slightly, enough to see the calculation underneath. You're punishing me because you don't like losing control, she said. You never did. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was raw. How long? She hesitated. That was answer enough. Daniel, she said softly, this isn't what he's making it look like. I stood. It's exactly what it looks like. And worse. I explained the trust, the clauses, the freezes, the reviews. Every word landed like a door locking shut. Laura's confidence drained, not into fear, but into anger. You can't do this, she said. I'm your son's wife, for now, I replied. She laughed sharply. You think this ends well for you? I can talk. I know things. So do I said. And mine are documented. That's when I made the phone call I'd been saving. I put it on speaker. The voice on the other end introduced himself. The consultant. He confirmed payments, meetings, promises Laura had made about future access she never had the right to offer. Daniel closed his eyes. Laura stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. You set me up. No, I said. You walked in convinced you owned the place. Security escorted her out, not roughly, just firmly. Dignity intact, consequences unavoidable. After she left, Daniel didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, I didn't want to believe you. I replied. That's why I waited. Outside, Laura was already on the phone, spinning, threatening, plotting her next move. She still thought she could recover something. She was wrong. Minnie, ending cliffhanger. As the door closed behind her, I knew the confrontation was over, but the fallout was just beginning. The days after the confrontation were louder than I expected, but not in the way people imagine. There were no headlines, no police lights, no courtroom drama. Just phones ringing, doors closing, and reputations quietly unraveling. Laura moved fast. People always do when they realize the floor has gone beneath them. She contacted family first, hers, then mine. Carefully edited versions of the truth began circulating. I was controlling, cold, vindictive, an old man obsessed with power. I let it happen. Lies burn themselves out when they don't hit resistance. What she didn't expect was how alone she was. The consultant disappeared. Accounts he'd relied on went dark. Promises she'd made on borrowed authority collapsed the moment verification was required. Doors that once opened on her smile now required credentials she didn't have. Daniel filed for separation quietly. No drama, no public statements, just paperwork and distance. I could see the damage in him, the way betrayal rearranges your understanding of the past. He wasn't angry with me. He was mourning a version of his life that had never actually existed. One evening, he came by again, sat across from me in silence. I keep thinking I missed signs, he said. You trusted someone you loved, I replied. That's not a flaw. He nodded, but the weight didn't lift. Laura tried one last time. She showed up unannounced, not angry, not polished, just tired. I made mistakes, she said, but you didn't have to destroy everything. I looked at her and felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not pity, just clarity. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I stopped protecting it. She left without another word. Weeks passed. Then months. The trust was restructured. Safeguards added. Daniel started over slowly, painfully, honestly. The lake house sat empty for a while. Healing requires space. I visited it alone one morning. The water was still. The house quieter than I remembered, but it felt clean again, not untouched, just reclaimed. I thought about how easily kindness can be mistaken for permission. How power, when unused, invites those who believe it's unguarded. Laura faded from our lives. Not dramatically, just gradually. That's the real consequence people fear, not punishment, but irrelevance. Minnie, ending cliffhanger. Standing by the lake, I realized the revenge was complete, but the lesson was still settling in. People expect revenge to feel triumphant, like a weight lifted, like justice ringing loud and clear. That's not how it ends. It ends quietly. Months later, Daniel and I sat on the dock at the lake house, lines cast into water that didn't owe us anything. He looked older, not weaker, sharper. Pain has a way of sanding down illusions until only truth remains. I keep thinking about who I was before all this, he said. Feels like someone else. That's because it is, I replied. You don't go through betrayal and come out unchanged. You just come out honest. He nodded. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. The trust was solid now, transparent, built to protect, not to enable. I stepped back from daily control, not because I had to, but because I no longer needed to prove anything. Power, I'd learned, is most effective when it's invisible and optional. As for Laura, her name surfaced once in a while. Always indirectly. A job that didn't work out. A move that didn't stick. People who burn bridges forget how few roads actually exist. I never reached out. Not out of cruelty, but because closure doesn't require conversation. It requires acceptance. On my last visit before winter, I walked through the house alone. Every room held echoes, not of betrayal, but of endurance. I realized something then that surprised me. The revenge wasn't freezing accounts. It wasn't exposing lies. It wasn't watching someone lose what they thought they'd secured. The real revenge was reclaiming authorship of my life and teaching my son how to do the same. I locked the door behind me and paused, hand on the frame. For the first time since my wife passed, the place felt like what it was always meant to be, a refuge, not a liability. As I drove away, I didn't look back. Not because it hurt, but because I didn't need to anymore. Meaning ending ding final noti. Some endings don't close chapters, they redefine the story. Morals reflection. True justice isn't about making others feel small. It's about refusing to let betrayal decide who you become.